Welcome forward with Chapter 5, Healing and Wholeness, page 41 of Jesus' Course in Miracles. The word know is proper in this context because the holy inspiration is so close to knowledge that it calls it forth, or better, allows it to come. We have spoken before the higher or the true perception, which is so close to truth that God himself can flow across the little gap. Knowledge is always ready to flow everywhere, but it cannot oppose. Therefore, you can obstruct it, although you can never lose it. The Holy Spirit is the Christ mind which senses the knowledge that lies behind perception. It can come into being with the separation as a protection, inspiring the beginning of the atonement at the same time. Before that, there was no need for healing, and no one was comfortless. The mind of the atonement. God honored even the miscreations of his children because they had made them. But he also blessed them with a way of thinking that they could raise their perception until they became so lofty that they could reach almost back to him. The Holy Spirit is the mind of the atonement. It represents a state of mind that comes close, although close enough to one-mindedness that transfer it to is at last possible. Transfer depends on common elements in the old learning and the new situation to which it is transferred. Perception is not knowledge, but it can be transferred to knowledge or cross over into it. It might even be more helpful here to use the literal meaning of carried over, since the last step is taken by God. The Holy Spirit, the shared inspiration of all the sonship, induces a kind of perception in which many elements are like those in the kingdom of heaven itself. First, its universality is perfectly clear, and no one who receives it could believe or ever believe for one instant that sharing it involves anything but gain. Second, it is incapable of attack and is therefore truly open. This means that, although it does not engender knowledge, it does not obstruct it in any way. There is a point at which sufficient quantitative changes produce real qualitative differences. The next point requires real understanding because it is the point at which the shift occurs. Finally, it points the way beyond the healing which it brings, and leads the mind beyond its own integration into the paths of creation. Healing is not creating, it is reparation. The Holy Spirit promotes healing by looking beyond it to what the children of God were before healing was needed, and will be when they have been healed. This alteration of time sequence should be quite familiar because it is very similar to the shift in time perception which the miracle induces. The Holy Spirit is the motivation for miracle-mindedness, the will to heal the separation by letting it go. This is when in you, because God placed it in your mind, and although you can keep it asleep, you cannot obliterate it. God himself keeps this will alive by transmuting it from his mind to yours as long as there is time. It is partly his and partly yours. The miracle itself is just the fusion or union of will between Father and Son. The Holy Spirit is the Spirit of joy. He is the call to return with which God blessed the minds of his separated sons. This is the vocation of the mind. The mind has no calling until the separation because, before that, it had only being and would not have understood the call to right thinking. The Holy Spirit was God's answer to the separation, the means by which the atonement could repair until the whole mind returning to creating. The atonement and the separation began at the same time. When man made the ego, God placed him in the call to joy. This call is so strong that the ego always dissolves at its sound. That is why you can choose to listen to two voices within you. One you made yourself, and that one is not of God, but the other is given you by God, who asks you only to listen to it. The Holy Spirit is in you in a very literal sense. His is the voice that calls you back to where you were before and will be again. The voice of God. The voice for God. It is possible, even in this world, to hear only that voice and no other. It takes effort and great willingness to learn. It is the final lesson that I learned, and God's sons are equal as listeners as they are souls. The voice of the Holy Spirit is the call to atonement, or to the restoration of the integrity of the mind. When the atonement is complete and the whole sonship is healed, there will be no call to return, but what God creates is eternal. The Holy Spirit will remain with the sons of God to bless their creation and keep them in the light of joy. You are the kingdom of heaven, but you have let the belief in darkness into your minds, and so you need new light. The Holy Spirit is the radiance that you must let banish the idea of darkness. His is the glory beyond this disassociation falls away, and the kingdom of heaven breaks through into its own. Before the separation, you did not need guidance. You knew, as you will know again, but as you do not know now. God does not guide because he can share only perfect knowledge. Guidance is evaluative because it implies that there is a right and also a wrong way, one to be chosen and the other to be avoided. By choosing one, you give up the other. Thus concludes page 4.